The containment field flickered, and Captain Marcus Chen knew they had less than 3 minutes before the entire orbital station collapsed into the gravitational anomaly. 27 species representatives stood frozen in the observation deck, their translators broadcasting panic in frequencies that made his teeth ache. But it wasn't the black hole forming beneath them that made his pulse quicken. It was the child. She'd appeared 17 seconds ago, materializing in the center of the chamber without triggering a single alarm. Small, no older than 7 in human years, with skin that seemed to contain entire galaxies and eyes that held the weight of dead civilizations. The Vryn Queen, 3 meters of armored exoskeleton and political power spanning 400 systems, had dropped to her knees the moment those eyes had turned toward her. "You recognize me," the child said, her voice carrying harmonics that shouldn't exist in normal space. The Queen's mandibles clicked in a rhythm Chen had studied for 5 years. Pure terror. "The Weaver. You're the Weaver." Marcus kept his hand steady near his sidearm, though he knew it would be useless. His training at the diplomatic corps hadn't covered this. Nothing covered this. The station groaned, structural integrity dropping to 43%. Emergency klaxons screamed, but every being in that room ignored the approaching death, transfixed by the small figure who shouldn't exist. "I offer a choice," the child continued, raising one hand. Reality bent around her fingers, space folding like paper. "One among you may ask anything of me. One request, I will grant infinite power to fulfill it." Her gaze swept the room, and Marcus felt his soul being weighed. "Choose wisely. Choose quickly. Your station dies in moments." The Vryn Queen's voice cracked through her translator. "We accept." "I speak for the collective." The child's word unmade sound itself for a heartbeat. "Not you, Ancient One. You've had your chances across the eons." Her eyes found Marcus. "Hi, him." The Cathar ambassador's crystalline body chimed in disbelief. The Solenth diplomats thought Corona flared crimson. But it was the Queen's reaction that made Marcus's combat instincts scream. She wasn't just afraid anymore. She was calculating. The human? The Queen rose slowly, her political mask sliding back into place. "The species barely graduated to interstellar travel. They don't understand." "He understands enough." The child stepped toward Marcus, and with each footfall the station's death countdown paused. Time itself hesitated around her. Captain Marcus Chen, decorated officer. Lost your wife and daughter to the Vryn border wars. Sworn oath to protect all sentient life regardless of origin. She tilted her head. "Ask me anything. Wish for anything. The power to reshape reality itself will be yours." Marcus's throat felt like sandpaper. Around him he could see it, the hunger in alien eyes. The Cathar ambassador leaning forward, ready to offer bribes. The Solenth preparing a telepathic assault. A dozen species who saw him as the barrier between them and godhood. The Queen spoke carefully. "Human. Bring back your family. We have the technology, hidden, forbidden. Just wish for the destruction of this anomaly and name your price to me after." "Silence!" The child didn't raise her voice, but the Queen's translator exploded in sparks. Marcus looked at the view screen. The black hole was beautiful in its horror, pulling in debris, light, hope. He thought of Sarah, of little Emma, of promises made over graves. He thought of the 17 delegates behind him, representing trillions of lives across the known galaxy. He thought of everything the power being offered could accomplish. "I need to understand something first," he said quietly. "Why me?" The child smiled, and it was the saddest thing Marcus had ever seen. "Because you'll ask the right question. Because you've stood at the edge of vengeance and chosen mercy. Because you're the only one in this room who might." She extended her hand. "But know this, once you accept my power, once you make your wish, you'll bear the weight of that choice forever." Infinite power demands infinite responsibility. 40 seconds remained. The Queen's eyes gleamed with barely concealed rage. Marcus could see her guard shifting position, ready to strike the moment the child's attention wavered. The other delegates whispered among themselves, plotting, planning. Marcus Chen had led soldiers into impossible battles. He'd negotiated peace treaties while standing on mass graves. He'd held his daughter's hand as the poison from Vryn weapons had shut down her nervous system, knowing that declaring war would doom billions, but that letting it pass would doom his soul. He'd learned that some choices branded you forever. He stepped forward and took the child's hand. Her skin felt like touching the surface of a star, burning cold, impossibly dense. Power flooded into him, infinite and terrible. He could feel reality becoming malleable, feel the threads of existence waiting for his command. In that moment, he could see everything. Every timeline, every possibility, every path to every desire. The Queen tensed, preparing for whatever impossible demand would come. Marcus opened his mouth, the weight of infinite power pressed down on Marcus's consciousness like a collapsing star. He could see through walls, through hulls, through the fabric of space itself. The black hole beneath him wasn't natural. Someone had weaponized it, aimed it at this peace conference like a bullet through diplomacy's heart. He could see the trigger mechanism, the conspirators, the political machinations spanning decades. He could unmake it with a thought. "Speak your wish," the child said, her voice gentle despite the cosmic forces flowing between them. "Ask, and reality will bend. Choose vengeance, human. I see it in your eyes. You want us to burn for what we did? Take it. Take your revenge and let the rest of us worry about the station." Marcus felt the power surge at those words, eager to be used. He could do it. Could bring back Sarah and Emma. Could punish every Vryn who'd authorized the chemical weapons. Could reshape the entire species into something incapable of cruelty. The power whispered possibilities, each more seductive than the last, but that wasn't what made him hesitate. Through his enhanced perception, he watched the other delegates. The Cathar ambassador had a weapon, previously undetectable, aimed at his spine. The Solan diplomat's telepathic assault was forming, ready to shred his mind the instant he made his wish. 3 other species had activated sleeper agents among the station crew. They were also certain he'd wish for something selfish, so certain they could steal or corrupt or manipulate whatever power he gained. Only the Vryn Queen sat perfectly still, watching him with ancient eyes that had seen civilizations rise and fall. She wasn't preparing to attack. She was preparing to negotiate. "You're afraid," Marcus said to her. "I'm practical." The Queen's voice came through a backup translator, tinny and small. "You have power. I have resources. You know what I'm going to ask for." Around them, the station groaned, 20 seconds from total collapse. The other delegates froze, sensing a shift in the dynamic they didn't understand. Marcus turned to the child. "Before I ask, I need to know something. This power, it's real? Truly infinite?" "Yes. No tricks? No careful wording that corrupts the wish?" "I am not a djinn from your stories, Captain. I am something far older and far more honest." The child's eyes held universes. "Your wish will be fulfilled exactly as you intend it. The weight, the consequence, the responsibility, those are the only prices. And those you will pay forever." The shot should have vaporized Marcus's skull, but the power caught it, held it frozen in space like an insect in amber. He barely noticed. "Then I understand what I have to do." Marcus looked at each delegate in turn, saw their greed, their fear, their desperate hunger for what he held. "And I understand why you chose me." "Do you?" The child stepped back, releasing his hand. The power remained, coiled in his chest like a quantum star. "Then speak." The station had 10 seconds. Marcus took a breath. Sarah used to tell him he overthought everything, that his best decisions came from his gut, not his head. Emma had inherited that from her, that beautiful certainty that some things were simply right. He'd spent 5 years learning to live with their ghosts. Learning that vengeance was a poison that hurt the drinker most of all. Learning that the hardest choices were the ones that made you better instead of bitter. "I wish," Marcus said clearly, "for everyone in this room, including myself, to understand, truly, deeply, completely understand, what it means to be powerless." The Queen's scream of rage came too late. Reality inverted. The infinite power that had been flowing through Marcus exploded outward, touching every being in the chamber. But instead of granting them strength, it showed them weakness. The Vryn Queen felt every moment of fear her species had inflicted across 1,000 worlds. The Cathar ambassador experienced the helplessness of every civilization they'd economically enslaved. The Solan diplomat drowned in the terror of minds they'd casually violated. Marcus fell to his knees as his own wish consumed him. He felt Sarah's powerlessness as the poison had spread, felt Emma's confusion as her body had betrayed her. But more than that, he felt every human who'd ever suffered from his decisions, every soldier who'd died following his orders, every family destroyed by conflicts he hadn't prevented. The child watched them all collapse, sobbing, broken by empathy they'd never possessed. "Interesting," she said softly. The station had 5 seconds. The black hole pulled harder, reality screaming at the edges. But something was changing. Marcus felt it through the power that still burned in his chest. A choice being made by beings who'd never chosen anything but self-interest before. The Cathar ambassador spoke first, his voice shaking. "Save the station, please. However, you just save them, all of them," the Solonth diplomat added, her thought corona pulsing with genuine horror at her own past actions. "Not just our species. Everyone outsmental our weapons programs," another delegate whispered. "We'll open our medical archives, share our faster-than-light technology, end the border conflicts, offers tumbled out, desperate and sincere, from beings who 30 seconds ago would have murdered for power." The weight of powerlessness had cracked something fundamental in each of them, but the Queen remained silent. Marcus looked at her through tears, still feeling the echo of his daughter's last breath. The Vryn ruler who'd authorized the weapons programs, who'd known exactly what would happen when chemical agents mixed with human biology. She met his eyes. "I can't give you what you want most. I know. But I can ensure it never happens again. To any species." The Queen's voice carried a weight it hadn't before. "I swear it. On my hive, on my throne, on everything my civilization is built. No more weapons that target biology. No more casual cruelty because we couldn't imagine being on the other side." Marcus felt the power waiting for direction, felt reality holding its breath. The wish had been fulfilled. They all understood powerlessness now, would carry that understanding forever. But the station was still dying, and the power was still his to command. He could save it. Could save everyone here who'd just sworn to be better. Or he could let them die, let justice fall like a hammer, and face the child knowing he'd chosen vengeance after all. Sarah's voice in his memory. "Some bridges you can't uncross, Marcus." Emma's laugh, bright and impossible. "But Dad, you're really good at building new bridges? 1 second. The power moved. The black hole inverted, collapsed, unmade itself at the quantum level. The station's hull repaired in reverse entropy, structural integrity jumping from critical to optimal in a heartbeat. Every system came back online, every alarm silenced, every threat neutralized. And, in the center of it all, Captain Marcus Chen felt the infinite power drain away, leaving only exhaustion and the permanent weight of what he'd witnessed. The child nodded, almost proud. "Well chosen." Marcus collapsed. The delegates caught him, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Beings who minutes ago would have gladly killed him now supported his weight with something approaching reverence. The Queen approached last, moving slowly, carefully. "You could have destroyed us." "Yes. Why didn't you?" Marcus looked up at her, at the alien features that had haunted his nightmares for 5 years. "Because Sarah wouldn't have wanted me to. Because Emma deserved a universe that learned to be better, not one that burned in revenge." He stood on shaking legs. "And because powerlessness taught me something too." "What?" "That I'd become so focused on what I'd lost, I'd stopped seeing what could still be saved." The observation deck fell silent. Outside, stars wheeled in their ancient dance, indifferent to the small dramas of mortal beings. But inside that room, something fundamental had shifted. The Cathar ambassador was the first to kneel, an action his species reserved for the divine. "We will honor this lesson, Captain Chen. We will remember." Others followed, one by one, a dozen species paying respect to the human who'd held infinite power and chosen to weaponize understanding instead of vengeance. Only the Queen remained standing. "I wronged you," she said finally. "I wronged your species, and I cannot undo it." Her mandibles clicked in a pattern Marcus now recognized as deep shame. "But I can spend the rest of my reign ensuring no child of any species suffers what your daughter suffered. Will you accept that?" Marcus thought about Sarah's grave, about Emma's favorite stuffed bear that still sat on his quarter's shelf. He thought about the 5 years of grief that had shaped him like water-shaping stone. He thought about the infinite power he'd held and the simple wish he'd made. "I accept that you'll try," he said. "That's enough to start." The Queen bowed her massive head, a gesture of submission no Vryn ruler had made in recorded history. The station's intercom crackled to life. "All hands, this is Commander Webb. Crisis contained, cause unknown. Resume standard operations. Diplomatic summit will reconvene in 6 hours." Around Marcus, the delegates began to disperse, moving slowly, carefully, like people waking from shared nightmares. But they touched his shoulder as they passed, a dozen different gestures of respect and gratitude. When the room had emptied except for the Queen, she spoke again. "The child called you worthy. What made you so?" "I'm not worthy," Marcus said quietly. "I just understood that power without empathy destroys everything it touches, and empathy without power to act is just spectating." He looked at his hands, remembering how they'd felt when infinite possibility had flowed through them. The trick is knowing which one you need in any given moment. And in this moment, which did we need? We needed to remember we're all powerless in the end. All fragile, all capable of being hurt. Marcus moved toward the exit, toward his quarters and the long reports he'd need to file. Maybe that's the only foundation peace can be built on, knowing that we all bleed. The Queen watched him leave, ancient and humbled, carrying the weight of revelation she'd spent centuries unpacking. In his quarters, Marcus sat at his desk and pulled up Sarah's final message, the one recorded 3 days before the end. He'd watched it 1,000 times, torturing himself with what-ifs and if-onlys. This time, he heard it differently. "Don't let this break you, Marcus. Don't let what happened to us poison everything else. Emma wouldn't want that." "I don't want that." Sarah's image smiled, weak but determined. "Promise me you'll remember that?" "I promise," Marcus whispered to the recording. "I finally promise." The weight on his chest, the one that had nothing to do with infinite power and everything to do with infinite grief, eased slightly. Not gone, never gone, but manageable. Outside his window, diplomatic shuttles began arriving for the reconvened summit. Representatives from 100 species, all about to enter negotiations shaped by a miracle they'd never fully understand. Marcus pulled up his incident report and stared at the blinking cursor. "How did you explain what had happened? How did you document the undocumentable?" Finally, he typed, "Today we learned that the greatest power isn't the ability to destroy our enemies. It's the courage to understand them. Request this lesson be included in all future diplomatic corps training. Recommend mandatory empathy protocols for all summit participants. Recommend we remember we're all powerless together, and maybe that's where real strength begins." He submitted the report and waited for the questions that would inevitably come. They'd think he'd gone mad, probably. They'd demand explanations, evidence, proof. Let them demand. He'd held infinite power and traded it for infinite understanding. He'd looked into the eyes of the being who'd killed his family and chosen construction over destruction. The old Marcus would have called that weakness. The new Marcus knew it was the hardest thing he'd ever done. 3 days later, the summit concluded with the Treaty of Mutual Understanding, the first interspecies agreement in galactic history that included mandatory empathy training and bilateral powerlessness recognition clauses. 17 species signed, including the Vrin Collective. Marcus stood in the observation deck where it had all happened, looking at the stars. No children appeared this time, no cosmic beings offering impossible choices. Just him and the weight of decisions made, his communicator chimed. A message from the Vrin Queen. Construction begins today on the Sarah and Emma Chen Memorial Medical Research Facility. No species will suffer from biological weapons again. You have my word. You have my hive's eternal debt. Marcus closed his eyes and let himself cry, really cry, for the first time since the funerals. When he opened them again, a junior officer stood nearby, looking uncertain. "Sir? Are you all right?" Marcus wiped his face and straightened his uniform.
"Yes, Ensign. I'm all..."
The transport to Earth leaves in an hour. Your leave was approved. Thank you." Marcus took one last look at the stars. Somewhere out there, a child with galaxies in her skin was watching, measuring, weighing the worth of species by the choices they made when no one forced them to choose. He hoped humanity had measured well. He hoped he had. As the transport carried him toward home, toward Sarah's grave and Emma's memorial garden and the long work of healing, Marcus Chen understood something the infinite power had tried to teach him, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose to build bridges instead of burn them, even when burning would feel so much easier. Especially then. The stars wheeled on, indifferent and eternal. But in one small corner of the galaxy, beings who'd learned what it meant to be powerless were beginning to build something new, something founded not on strength or dominance or fear, but on the simple recognition that we all bleed, we all hurt, and we're all fragile together. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Marcus looked out the viewport at the infinite dark between stars and smiled. Not a happy smile, not yet. But a smile that held hope, hard-won and precious. Sarah would have approved. Emma would have laughed and called him a softy, and somewhere in his chest, where infinite power had burned for a few impossible moments, Marcus carried a different kind of strength. The strength to choose understanding over vengeance. The strength to face those who'd wronged him and demand they be better. The strength to believe that broken things could heal if given time and care. The child had called him worthy. He was starting to believe she might have been right. The transport jumped to faster than light, and Captain Marcus Chen closed his eyes, carrying the weight of his choice forward into whatever future waited, knowing that he'd been granted infinite power and used it for the most human thing possible. He'd asked everyone, including himself, to simply understand each other. In the end, that had been enough to change everything.